and this is Angela Hahn. She is the VP of Customer Success and Professional Services with SendGrid. She's recently moved there as their leader. Prior, she was with Ping Identity, another big technology, fast-growing company here headquartered in Denver. And Angela has led things from customer success to sales, professional services, training, and really will bring a very rigorous process approach to how she really talks about customer success. So welcome, Angela. And then we also have Nancy joining us. She is with My Way. She is the CX lead there. She is out of Mississauga, Canada. And Nancy has 25 years in the transit industry and also has a really strong, really HR background that she's brought into CX, which I find such a great connection when you're really trying to engage your team members. So we'll learn a lot from Nancy today. And then our third panelist is Sam Noir. He's VP of Customer Experience Strategy at American Bath Group. Prior, he was with Verizon Enterprise Solutions, where I met Sam. And Sam has lots of great experience, definitely around continuous improvement, journey mapping. As you can see, he likes hiking, and he is sarcastic at some time, and really fun to hear from Sam as well. So those are our three panelists, and the way I'm going to do this today is, because we do want your questions at the end, but I'm going to pose one overarching question for each of the panelists to take some time to respond, share their learnings and successes, and then kind of summarize the key themes, and then we'll open it up and take a few questions from you. So the question is, it really comes down to what I said in the beginning. What learnings, have you had, that can share with us, and that's really led to some successes? And in framing this question, I've talked to each of the panelists, over the past 2 weeks. It is, what we see is there's big things, there's small things, and, how does it come together to really move your program forward? So that's the question: what learnings have led to your success as a CX leader? And I'm going to start with Angela and ask Angela to give her perspective on this with everyone. So Angela.
Thank you, Carrie. There are multiple areas that I feel like as CX leaders we need to kind of dig into, but I think one of the real salient opportunities that I have found is actually in training the team. I think it's really foundational. When I think about customer success in general, it's a newer, field. This wasn't even called customer success 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so when we think about the talent that we're then hiring to take on these roles, they don't have more than 5 or 10 years of experience per se in what I think is now defined as customer success. And so making sure that depending on your company's needs, that the team who's engaging directly with customers and accounts, that they actually are trained with the skills and kind of client engagement model that will foster a really proactive customer experience. So I've spent quite a bit of time on kind of building, making sure that teams have a framework to work within, specifically around account plans. What are the things that your customer success manager needs to know about an account? Going into it, maybe new in their portfolio. Also giving them tools like presentation decks of how to actually engage with customers and learn more about their business. And absolutely reporting. I think it is so important for our customer success managers, while their day-to-day is engaging with customers, whether responding to issues or questions or proactively probing and uncovering how can we better support their business needs. I think it's important to make sure that our CS teams really understand the macro of how we contribute to the company. So some of the training I also spend time on is understanding the metrics that the team is measured on. Why do we talk about net expansion rate? for example, and helping them really understand, wow, you have a huge impact to the business. Because in my industry, in the tech industry, you know, it's a subscription model. And so the customer success team in my organization is responsible for the customer install base. It is the majority of the revenue of the company. And so really wanting to empower them and have them understand the macro contribution that they make to then drive them with the micro engagement. The training to me has been really critical.
Yeah, and Angela, I think there's a few things. Just it really is specific when you think about the technology industry, SaaS businesses, and you know the way, and you and I've talked about this, is the way you look at customer success. It is you know, especially with technology, it is a bit different than has traditionally been defined as customer experience, where we see a lot of focus in customer service, onboarding, and you really do get very far upstream around account management. And like you said, you're in charge of the install base, so it's a real high impact area, but not a real traditional like we've seen, you know, I mean, again, customer experience is so fuzzy in its definition in general, but in technology, it's very clear it has to be, you know, as far upstream as when you bring customers on as possible. And when you talk about, you know, framework, you know, what does that mean to you? Like when you say framework to work in?
Sure. So historically, and as Carrie mentioned, I've just recently joined SendGrid, so I am absolutely in the height of this, and it's also partly why I love talking with Carrie about this, is I've joined this company, and as you can imagine, it's mapping out the customer experience. And so in doing that, you get a good sense of what our current state is with our customers and how we engage with them. And then taking that knowledge and speaking with customers to get their perspective on what the experience has been like, it starts to inform a new client engagement model for the organization. And I've done this at several companies now, and it's just been a powerful, the customer mapping is so critical because you really have that opportunity to see the big picture and have that visual to say, okay, is that really the experience that I want my customers to have that really set them up for success? And so the client engagement model, what we do here is we break down the customer journey into stages, and based on the mapping, we start to redefine how we want to have this engagement. And so you mentioned onboarding. So our onboarding experience, you know, when we mapped it out, we identified, okay, it's very transactional, and it's actually very SendGrid-centric. And so we're in the process of defining what are the proactive and value-driven interactions that we can have with our customers. Interactions that are value-based versus transactions, which is probably a little bit of what we've been struggling with, you know, in our current model. And so that's what I'm referring to when we talk about a client engagement model. It starts to define what we want each stage of the journey to look like to really drive true customer success, having them be successful with our solution. So that's what I'm referring to here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then my last question on the point on value-based, you know, kind of moving towards focusing on those value-based touch points and metrics. Can you give us an example of one that you've identified? I know it's been a short period of time, but is there something that just stood out and said, like, this is a really important touch point and we got to get this right each time with our customers?
Sure. I've noticed this actually is an issue that has come up at a couple companies I've worked at, and these are the companies, tech companies that I've worked at that have been growing 30 to 40% year over year. So it seems to be a theme for these fast-paced growing companies, which is it's recognizing that if we really put ourselves in our customers' shoes, where are the moments of truth? Right? And in the one that I find has been a myth here at SendGrid, and we're really revisiting it to celebrate it, is when our customers purchase our solution, no matter how we see what we want to have our customers achieve, we need them to complete this and, have this step and make sure they've reviewed this and signed this. But really, if you're the customer, you've just purchased and you want to go live, right? And so what I've observed, and this was even at my last company that you mentioned, Ping, is that it's such a fast-paced company that we often get them up and running, and then the minute they go live, the team kind of like brushes off their hands. They're like, okay, we got to move to the next one, and help more customers go live successfully. When it's like, well, wait a minute, this is a big milestone for our customers. We should acknowledge this. They just hit success with our solution, and now it's their next journey. And so it's making sure that we don't get too bogged down in what we want for our customers, like get them up and running, but really about what do our customers want. Well, now they're up and running. Now we really need to help them optimize the solution, maintain the solution, and make sure that that is more value along the way. And so I think both of these companies that I've worked at, they are incredibly customer motivated, but when they're so fast-paced, growing so quickly, I think that was a missed opportunity. So we're really trying to bring some value to, one, let's celebrate it and acknowledge the hard work that they did, and then make sure that they are successful go forward.
Love it. That's a great example, and it is that kind of slow down to speed up, in taking that outside-in view. So really, really great example. Thank you, Angela. So I am going to move to Nancy now. Nancy, same question, what learnings have led to your success as a CX leader? And I'll turn it over to you.
Quite a few learnings, Carrie. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity for speaking today. I think two things I want to let the audience know is that, yes, this is possible in the government sector. I know we often hear from webinars where it's B2B, B2C, but it's private sector. So I want everyone to know that I work for a municipal government, but we have regional, provincial, and federal stakeholders as well. So there's a lot of layers for approval process and things like that. But there is a way to make it work. And you can start with a blank piece of paper, whether you're in private sector or government. It is possible to start this journey with no roadmap, with nothing except that, wow, we need to fix some things. So that's a little bit of the experience at My Way with customer experience. Customer experience being such a broad scope of study. It was a bit undefined when I took the role of, well, we have some things to fix, but we're not really sure. So one of the biggest learnings that my experience as a CX lead has been that's a little bit different than other organizations is that we've really focused on the customer experience is a reflection of your employees' experience. So if things are not working out for your customers, the approach that I took with this is that a good place is to look at your employee engagement results and the internal cultural dynamics to figure out why are we having pain points and why do we have moments of truth? Where is that coming from? I mean, it's an easy go-to to look at technology or processes, but we also wanted to look at the full cultural dynamic of our organization and what was happening. So to give everybody some reference, for the simplicity of this exercise, because we have almost 1,500 employees, I knew that we would take this down into a cultural transformation as well as a customer experience transformation. So for the definition of culture, I did quite a bit of research and summed it up as 3 elements. What do we value? How do we do things here? How do we get things done? And the third is, how do we treat each other while we're doing them? So through that lens, I started this journey by doing a cultural assessment with 130 staff with primarily one-on-one interviews. I invested about 240 hours of very meaningful, intense dialogue with call center reps, with the CEO, with the senior leadership team, all frontline managers, pretty much everybody that was in an administrative role, and even a few of our unionized folks. And I asked 4 questions. I said, what do you do in your role to serve the customer? To see whether or not there was any comprehension within our culture of frontline customer service and internal customers, so internal and external customers. I wanted to get a sense of, was our organization ready to have that conversation about, well, I might not serve the person who rides the bus, but we didn't mention my way is the public transit system in Mississauga. You might not serve that customer directly, but you certainly do something in your role that serves someone who serves the customer. So I wanted to get a sense of where we were culturally in our understanding of that. And then I asked people, what's great and easy about doing your job? What works really well? To get a sense of what are those things that we don't need to fix? What are the successes and the good stuff that we have to capitalize on? And then the third question was, what gets in the way of you doing a great job? We have many, many different types of stakeholders in the public sector. We have multiple levels of government. We have our customers. We have taxpayers who may or may not use our system, but they have an opinion about it. We have our council and our mayor that have ideas about where they want to take the transit system within the context of city building. So there are many players that are happening that we have to be conscious of when we make decisions and when we move forward with something. And then I asked everybody, if you had the power, what would you change if you knew it would stick? The interesting thing is, shortly after I completed that exercise, I happened to come across the author Michael Abrashoff, who wrote It's Your Ship, and he asked very similar questions when he took over U.S. Naval Command of a ship in the Pacific Ocean. Very interesting book if you want to read it. It gives a bit of context to what I did here to give us a benchmark of where are we at. The interesting thing is our employee engagement results were not far off what I found, but the exercise of speaking to people meaningfully one-on-one was twofold in that it validated at a deeper level what our employee engagement results already told us. It gave us some more directional pointers as to what some root causes might be, and it gave us some insights as to where we might start looking with our customer journey mapping before we engaged CFN to help us put that customer journey map together, because we didn't have anything in a CX world that you would consider a typical CX tool. We were really starting with blank, pieces of paper. So I think one of the biggest learnings I contribute to the audience is really recognizing that your customer experience is a reflection of your employee experience and is a good point to start from looking at where is the pain, what do we need to fix, and where are we not working well together to deliver for our customers.
Great. I love the whole, well, your background is so interesting, Nancy, and then how you've taken that approach and into the sector that you work in, which I think there is a lot of perception. It's hard, but so many of the things you said apply whether you're B2B or B2C. Really, really great insights here. And I have a couple of questions for you. When you did your interviews and then you looked at the employee engagement, I mean, you said it validated mostly what you saw. Was there any surprises that came out of it for you as you, again, any kind of aha moments that weren't in the survey specifically? I mean, having spent all that time talking to the team members?
That's a great question, Carrie, and thank you for asking it, because it gives me the opportunity to share how humbling it was to sit for those 240 hours and listen to our staff. It's not often in any organization, public sector or private, that we actually have the opportunity to let them have a voice in a meaningful way, and the passion for change that I was presented with every day. I mean, sometimes I would do 6 hours a day, back-to-back of interviews, and how humbling it was to listen to our team members talk about how they want to do better, but this gets in my way, or this other thing gets in my way. And I'm honestly, out of 130 people, I can count on less than one hand the number of people that were, fearful of having the conversation or resistant or a little bit dubious about, well, what is she really up to? I honestly share, I had people crying. I had people who were so passionate they were angry and they were really, really wanted to make a difference. And so much of that came from our frontline and our mid-level staff who were so invested. And one of the things to know is that our organization, we move about 1 million people a week on our transit system. It takes an enormous army of logistics to make that happen on a daily and weekly basis, to make sure you've got the right bus on the right route with the driver at the right time, going to the schedule, all the electronics are working. It's a very complex system that we mobilize. We run 23 hours a day, so there are people here working 24/7, 365. It's quite a huge, complicated operation, and so having that opportunity to hear those stories really helped me connect when our consultant, Laureen, took us through the customer journey map. I could give her lots of insights about, well, this is something that I heard anecdotally, and I think, it's the small stuff that you really shouldn't overlook. It counts more than you think. And those touch points with those employees, now it's been about 12, 14 months since I've met with everybody, and I still have people who come up to me and talk about how valued they felt and how integral they felt to the organization because I sat with them for a full hour. And if it went more than an hour, we sat for 90 minutes. And if it went for 2 hours, I bumped somebody else to keep the conversation going, or I circled back with them. The other thing I did was I wrote a handwritten note to every individual that I met with, thanking them for their participation and for being so honest and upfront with me, and trusting in the confidence that I would take their concerns and consolidate them into an action plan. And it takes a lot of time, and we're almost a year down the road, and I'm sure that some of those recommendations people haven't seen action on yet. But it's building that trust and gathering the information that gives you a double whammy of benefit from having that kind of investment in time and energy.
The handwritten note is it seems like a small thing, but it's a huge effort. I know, I'm sure it took a while, but gosh, how meaningful. And then my last question, Nancy, for you is, you talked about the small stuff really matters. I mean, as you look at this whole process you've been through and you've applied it to your customer's journey, I mean, can you give us an example of something, even from your 1 million people a week that participate in your experience that is an example of a small step?
Absolutely. One of the things that really, when we got the results of the focus groups that we did as part of we did our customer journey map, and we have transit, and the transit industry has a plethora of data. We have all kinds of quantitative data, ridership data, financial data, performance data. We have tons and tons of data. What we didn't have a lot of was the qualitative focus group data, so we made sure that that was within the scope of our engagement, that we wanted to do meaningful conversations, really, really deep dives to understand the sentiments that our customers were experiencing. So, of course, one of the spines in our journey map is going to be the ride on the bus. I mean, how could it not be? And the interaction with the operator. So one of the questions that we asked to be probed was safety on the bus. How safe do you feel? And we were very much expecting answers to be in the realm of the drivers operating the buses. Were they driving safely? Were they braking too hard? Were they accelerating before people sat down? Were they swerving? All those kinds of things. Interestingly, the conversation went to the personal safety of the person on the bus. And in the probing, we found two things that made people feel safe that we never would have come up with on our own. One of them, which was completely shocking, was the posting of policies inside the bus actually makes our passengers feel safe. That there is some standard expected code of conduct and behavior put out to the passengers, knowing that those are posted in the bus and that everybody can read them and that everybody should abide by them, people actually cited that, which is a very odd thing to cite during a focus group, but it came up repeatedly. So we were like, wow, how easy is that? Make sure that those panels are up there, make sure that they get replaced and they don't get faded, and it's a low-cost thing that is a huge impact for how our customers behave, because how our customers behave, and you've got a little microcosm of a community when that bus has got 20 or 30 or 5 people on it driving down the road. The other element that is really no cost, it's based in training, it's cultural, it's how we do things around here, and that was when customers told us that their personal safety was highly impacted by whether or not the driver made eye contact with them as they boarded. It's very easy for a driver to look at their run guide, to look at the computer instrumentation that they have on board, and ignore people as they're paying their fare and walking on. I'll say we have a very high driver satisfaction rate, customer satisfaction rate with our drivers. It's in the 80s. But it was interesting that the safety element of it, what made the big difference was if that driver makes eye contact with you as you're boarding and you walk down the bus and there's someone who, you know, may be a little bit odd looking and that's the last seat left and you've been standing all day at your job and you really, really want to sit down, knowing that that driver was there, they connected to, if something doesn't go well on this bus ride home, I know that you've got my back because you've got all that instrumentation sitting around you and you and I made eye contact. And it was like a heart-to-heart like connection energetically with that operator where that passenger is feeling safe. And safe passengers are happy passengers. They have certainty. They are sure that, you know, I'm going to get home, and not only am I going to get home, if something doesn't go right, I know you've got my back. So we have that very, very simple understanding is now going to become a cornerstone of one of the customer service modules for our driver training and refresher training, because it doesn't cost us anything, it doesn't take any extra time, it doesn't impact the quote-unquote product, which is the ride, that i.e. the bus being on time and on schedule, and yet it makes a huge difference for how our customers feel, and the customer experience is primarily emotional.
Yeah, that great examples, and it is just those things you find out from really listening to your customers, and like you said, Nancy, really doing a qualitative study on that and asking them. So no, great examples of how really culture and inside the company and how that all links to you know, how your customers feel. So great examples there. And I'm going to go to our third panelist now, Sam Noir, who is with the American Bath Group. And Sam, I'll turn it over to you with the same question. What learnings have led to your success as a CX leader?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's going to dovetail pretty nicely with what Nancy and Angela just spoke about, but I would say that you would never underestimate, or should never underestimate, the power of a quick win in a story. And so, you know, stories and quick wins can help evangelize, help you evangelize the concept of CX and to facilitate the discussion, so that you and your peers within the company can help you know, bring the concept to life, right? So typically we read about it and talk to others that practice it in other places at a high level, and we talk about it in concept, but, you know, what does it really mean in reality? And so, you know, using quick win examples to help bring it to life and make it visceral for people, bringing customers into the conversation to interact with people that typically work behind the scenes, so that they see the impact of the work that they do directly from the customer's mouth. I think that's always powerful. That's always helped me in my prior life in Verizon, but also in my current role at American Bath Group, which is a manufacturer. You know, in a factory setting, you know, getting the plant workers to understand that the work that they do, right, that the common thought is that CX, what is CX? What does it matter to me? I'm sitting in a factory. And, you know, the point that we try to make to them is it matters, the work that you do matters. It has an impact. You're part of a broader organization that has to work in sync with each other. And if we are not completely aligned, it has a downstream impact on a customer. So some of the things that we've done, I can give you two examples actually of, building those stories and quick wins. I can give you a Verizon example, and I'll give you an ADG example. So two different worlds. Verizon Enterprise Solutions sells communication services, right? So kind of nebulous type of high-end data and voice and internet type services sold to large enterprises. There was this operations person in an order management world, realizing that delivery times were a constant source of pain for customers. And so this person took it upon themselves to fix the process, right? They got tired of putting Band-Aids on this issue of delivery times and late deliveries or undelivered services. So what they did is they went into the business, into the process itself, did some nuts and bolts improvements, continuous improvements, and were able to demonstrate a significant reduction in delivery time of a service based on promise dates. So that was great work that they did, but it was sitting behind the scenes, right? And the position that I held at Verizon gave me this advantage of being centralized. So it gave me this connection point to all the work that people were doing throughout the business. So I saw that as an opportunity to kind of collect and monitor the work that people are doing. But let's connect the work, the operational nuts and bolts work that they're doing, to the impact that it will have to customers, and be able to articulate that in a story format, so that you give that line worker sitting behind the scenes an opportunity to express the impact of their work through the story, and you give them a platform to sort of articulate that in a way that engages others around them to see the impact of the work that this person's doing. Wow, I'm doing a bunch of work over here on my end too. Maybe I could tell you my story. So it kind of generates this additional engagement from others that don't realize initially that they do have an impact. And now that they see this one person in this one corner of the company whose work was turned into a story that impacts customer experience in a visceral way, now they want to participate and tell their stories, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it all helps you in your evangelization and thought leadership about the concept. And it sort of becomes a force multiplier for you. And it really started with that one story. You take this one work that this one person did, or in order management, they reduced cycle times for some order delivery process. You connect it to the CX metrics that you already measure, and then you're able to articulate the specific customers that had a positive impact of this particular work. That was a Verizon example. An American Bathroom example, which is pretty recent because I've only been there for a couple of months. And this is a manufacturer of bathtubs and showers. Right? So we make physical products in a factory setting, and then we have to load it into trucks and then ship it and deliver it physically. Right? So slightly different, right? So it's an actual physical, tangible product. And there's this level of disengagement among the workers in the various factories that we have, and it's understandable, right? They work in their silo. And the challenge that I have is how do I relate customer experience, a fuzzy topic, to people that are meat and potatoes, just show me the money type of people. And you can't BS them, so you got to give them something visceral, something tangible that they can actually consume as an example of the impact of their work. So what I did was I reached out to a couple of the regional sales directors, and just to talk to them, just to get to know them and understand their worlds. And just in like 5 minutes of discussion, they gave me all sorts of examples of stories of redemption, about how we were underperforming as a company and keeping our promises in various areas, and how the sales manager or sales director reached out to their clients and turned the relationship around by demonstrating value consistently over a short period of time, and that kind of turned things around. And in that turnaround and regaining their trust resulted in additional business and increased wallet share for that one customer because of that one short-term turnaround. It's almost like they captured that experience, they understood it. The regional sales director acted upon it and created a sort of a repeatable way to keep it alive, and then that customer remembered it, and it turned into additional, it generated retention for that one customer, but also generated an additional business by referring to additional customers in the same region. I took that one example and turned it into a video where that one customer, this one person gave me as an example, just basically told their story in a sort of a video format, like a 3 or 4 minute video. And then I played that video. I actually went to one of the factories that was, we have 24 facilities throughout the country, and there are a couple of chaotic facilities. They just don't perform very well. So I went into the most chaotic facility where the production process is kind of a mess, and they're completely disengaged. And I went in there with this one 3 or 4 minute video, playing it for them. And then I called up the actual customer who agreed to do this beforehand. And I had this customer on the phone, and I did this, I had the customer kind of log into a WebEx and share his screen to demonstrate their website and how our products are being sold by them through their website. And if our products appear defective or don't show up on time, and these are typical problems that we were experiencing as a company, then this customer is affected by it, and they can't sell our products on our behalf because it's either late or defective or damaged for some reason. And that was a way for the factory workers to hear directly from the customer's mouth about the impact of their work within the factory and how it affects this one distributor customer who would sell to a plumber or a contractor. So that was a way for them to kind of see the fruits of their labor, like, keeping consistent processes, delivering on a consistent basis, on a timely fashion, really does matter. And it's not like a one-time thing that we ask you to do. It's something we ask you to do every day, and that the work that you do, even behind the scenes, does have an impact to customers. And this is the one example that that really resonated with them because they heard it not from me, right? They heard it directly from the customer's mouth.
That's a great example. I mean, again, connecting, and early on in your role there, I mean, you have to, as you're trying to show everyone what it really means and bringing the customer to say this, and learning that through your team members. I was going to ask you the same question, Sam, for Verizon, when you were telling the story around delivery times. How in that environment did you communicate internally about these, quick wins and these stories? I mean, just other techniques you've used.
Oh, yeah. So this is kind of where it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, I used this one story. I put him on a pedestal. We had at Verizon, there's a typical corporate intranet, right? And then there's I created a newsletter format, just a very brief mechanism where we would send blast emails to the entire company, like a CX sort of newsletter, very brief. And if you wanted to hear more or learn more about X story, then you click the link and it takes you to an intranet site. So I put the story, it's like a one-page, very brief description of what the problem was, the solution, and the result, right, with a lot of graphics. And, big bold letters for the person's name, the person that did the work, right? So let's put them on the pedestal. They are the one that did the work, and they saw the opportunity, and they took advantage of it. So, so it was their opportunity to shine. Through this like one-page little article that we wrote with a nice little graphic that shows, reduction in time that correlated to increase in satisfaction and therefore increase in revenue. So, so it was done in a nice little graphical way on a one-pager that was led to you through a very brief kind of blast email. It was amazing what happened, because as soon as we sent that email, we tracked the clicks, and then those click-throughs took people to the intranet site, and I could see the traffic. So this went to 10,000 employees. I could see the click-throughs that all went to this one intranet site. Now, and I'll tell you that the Verizon intranet is crowded with content. And this one day, there was about 6,000 views within one day, right? It's crazy. And these were unique views. This is just one story. And then what happened after that was it was almost like a flood of interest from different people that wanted to tell their story too.
Yeah.
It just kind of took off there.
Yeah, no, that's great, because, you know, I think all of us experience those crowded intranet sites. It's like anything, you're trying to get real estate on it, and ultimately you got to, you know, you really triggered something there with the team members, you know, with the story you told. And like you said, I think there's key things there, the visuals, you know, really laying out the problem, the solution, the result, acknowledging the team member. Really great example there in a big environment. And my last question, Sam, for you, and then we have a couple questions from our audience for the panelists, is, you know, being really new, and, you know, Angela's in the same situation too, you know, in your environment at American Bath. I mean, it sounds like some of the first things you did are talking to people, learning what's going on, what their perspective of CX, similar to what, you know, Nancy spent hours doing with her team. What you know, what advice would you give to people, like, you know, when you do take a, you know, a role like this, you're new in the environment? I mean, clearly, you know, you talked about the power of quick win and stories. Is there anything else specifically you would guide people to do, you know, in that first, you know, 30, 60 days?
I would say that the number one thing you got to do is immerse yourself in the world of whatever world it is. So I came from a technology company, right, and everything's virtual. You can't really describe what Verizon sells to people. And I, you know, shifted from that to manufacturing. Manufacturing actual products, right? So I had to immerse myself in their world, and there's a Japanese term called go to gemba that basically refers to going. I think it literally means going to the scene. So you want to learn the business. If you want to learn the business, you need to follow the process from beginning to end. So just like we would typically do a journey map in a sort of a workshop setting, the best way to learn about the business and find out what the positive things are and what the negative things are within that business is to immerse yourself in the process itself. How does it operate? So what I did, I mean, I've been here for 4 months. I spent about a month and a half practically living in a factory. I went to a variety of factories. I started with the problematic ones, the ones that were, you know, known chaos zones, just to get to know it. You know, why is it chaotic? How does this operation work? How does business come into it? And then what do we do with that business? And what happens when the business exits, right? And so I kind of did that within a factory setting, just to understand how that works. But then also, let's interact with the office people, the people that are not in the factories, the people who are in the back office world, and, you know, how do they operate? So just kind of sitting in and getting to know people and making the rounds. Yeah,
that's great. And it is such a shift from what you were doing to the manufacturing. No, really great, Sam. Thank you very much. And we do have a couple questions. So, Ann, do you want to pose our first one?
Sure. So thank you very much, everybody. The first question is, what industry tools, potentially CX tools, are used to aid the generation of CX ROI reports and high-level analysis reporting?
So, so I guess, you know, Nancy, Angela, and Sam, have any of you used any ROI tools or anything around that you would want to share? I'll open it up.
Carrie, I can jump in here. One of the things that was really important was making a link between what we were working on and the financial impact. So we did some diagnostic work. Well, actually, your team did the diagnostic work. We just provided the data to try and quantify the dollar impact by the touch points that were coming up red on our chart. So one of the key elements that we ran the analytics of our customer satisfaction survey of Net Promoter Score to sentiment, to the qualitative words that our customers used when they filled out our customer satisfaction survey. So what we found by really looking at the detractors and the words that they were using and linking those back to the moments of truth, that's where that journey map becomes so key, because you've got to know, well, what part of it are they talking about? Otherwise, it's kind of shotgun, right? And when your C-suite is saying, well, we're spending an awful lot of money on staff and resources and, you know, efforts to work on this nebulous thing called customer experience, what are the dollars attached to that? And what we were able to do is that a key portion of our revenue loss or at risk was linked to primarily 4 moments of truth. So we're able to now focus our resources to those areas because a key amount of our revenue is tied to those 4 areas specifically. So we can go in and say, you know, if we've got X number percentage at risk because we're not doing well on these 4 points on our journey map, why would we be spending our resources and time and energy on all those other ones that are all good to go? So it's a very, I'd say, is it a tool that I could download to you on an Excel template? No, I think it's going to be customized for every organization for what their specific point is. But I think for anybody out there wondering whether or not it's worth it to do the journey map and actually do those diagnostics, I think it absolutely is, because it facilitates that conversation with the C-suite to say, why should we bother putting any money into this or resources into this? You know, we're all stretched so thin, everyone's got too much to do. That's a lot of the conversation that's in our culture as well. It doesn't matter, I don't think it matters if you're government or private sector, everyone's got too much to do and we're all stretched thin. So you want to have a very strategic conversation about, well, should we be putting, you know, if we've only got this much money or this many staff, should they be working on these projects? Or can those wait a year because we really need to fix these ones because we've got a certain percentage of our revenue at risk? And then it's easy to go back and test again and do another CSAT survey, asking more specific questions, those touch points, and see whether those detractors are really, you know, are they 1s on the NPS scale, or maybe they're 5s now. So it's a very clean, clear diagnostic tool to justify the efforts and the resources being expended.
Yeah, so Nancy, no, great articulation of it. So I'm just going to play back, and then we have 3 more questions. So I'm going to move to the next question. But the playback, and I would agree with Nancy on this. I mean, it is more of a process in how you leverage your data to get to that ROI. And as Nancy said in her example, it was the combination of they do a survey, look at that NPS, look at the sentiment, the actual text data, and then really link that back to their revenue. And so I think what's always important is you have to know what matters. Is it churn? Is it retention? Is it organic revenue growth? And then work backwards to the data you have. And then to Nancy's point, get it really prescriptive back to a piece of your journey, you know, so that you can actually take action on it. But, and I know you've done a lot of work on this, Nancy, and really good work. So I'm going to just based on time, I'm going to try to, because I know that you guys, there's more questions out there. We're probably going to get to 1 or 2 at the most, but let's go to another one, Ann.
Okay. What are some ways you put voice of the customer insights to share across the company? What are certain challenges faced with doing this and making, scrolled off, So voice of the customer, how are you rolling out your voice of the customer, and what are the certain challenges faced with doing this and making sure this business acts on the feedback?
Okay, so why don't we go, how about Angela, do you want to take that one?
Sure. It sounds like several of us use NPS as one of our data points as we're, managing our teams. And there are multiple ways we get customer feedback, and NPS is one of them. But I can say that I have had a Voice of the Customer Summit, and we do them quarterly. And we ask leaders from each functional area to participate. Again, my context is I'm working for tech companies. This is something that I had run at the companies that are, sub 1,000-person organizations. So some of you, this may not be entirely relevant, but the point here is we as a customer success organization, and historically it will also include professional services and tech support, because all of them are so direct customer facing. And every quarter, it's asking those teams and those leaders to roll up the observations of the quarter while they're fresh. I actually have that internal team expectation completed in month 3 of the quarter because they're in the muck of it, frankly. And then we report it out to the leaders, typically senior director and VP, and frankly, some of the officers have gotten engaged as well. But really sharing kind of the observations. And this, I'll be very brief, this has been powerful for my team because they feel like they're heard and their customers are heard. And I think that's really important because I think all 3 of us, there seems to be a real consistent theme around our people. And so I really think it's so important that they're empowered and that they share and that they're heard. So that's one of the elements that we do that I've been doing with the companies I'm at.
Yeah, I love that, the VOC Summit quarterly. That's a really great way to engage people. And so, we are out of time. We do have, there are other questions. I recognize folks on the phone. We will get back to you on those. And I am going to just kind of summarize our key takeaways today. And really thank Sam and Nancy and Angela for all their great learnings and expertise. And, the key things that we heard today definitely around this quick wins and stories and really, the essence of them. Yes, it's metrics and it's about the customer, but it's also that link to the team member, which gets to, point number 2, and as Angela just, closed with, there is this common theme of success as a CX or customer success leader is all about your teams and how you're engaging them. And then lastly, as you can see in these 3 leaders, I'm a big believer in this. Leadership is everything. This stuff just doesn't happen. It happens through great leadership and great direction and great role modeling. So, that I would take as a takeaway here for everyone is, we can always learn from each other, and just always listening and learning to everyone around us will make us all better leaders. And with that, I want to turn it back to Ann, and with the close of the session today. And again, everyone have a really, really, really great rest of the week and a great weekend. Ann.
Thank you, Carrie. So as we always offer now, you are invited to a complimentary 30-minute session with Carrie to discuss what you heard today and how it applies to you and your business. So if you're interested, you can drop your name in the Q&A box, in the same box that people were submitting questions, or you can reply to the meeting invite, and we will get back to you. And then as a follow-up, we have something called the Best Practice Assessment. Every company falls into effectively 4 distinct quartiles, depending on how you're implementing your customer-centric efforts. So your response to the BPA will be used to create your company's CFN rating. And we will send this link out. I know it looks like gibberish now. We'll send this link out when we send a thank you for attending. And then finally, thank you very much for attending. We are having a webinar next month where our customer, Northwestern Mutual, will be facilitating the webinar. So please join us. And if you have any additional questions, please send them to myself. You can reply to the email or the webinar invite. We will get them, however. We'll also respond to the questions we weren't able to get to because of time today. So I want to thank very much Angela, Nancy, Sam, and Carrie. This concludes our CX Leader Panel discussion for April. Thank you for all attending. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much, everybody.